NUS has always planned for a pandemic. We've been practicing our BCP, our business continuity planning, based on SARS. So for us, we had the foundations already of what to do. We had our processes documented, our people trained to be resilient and flexible. So it was more to make sure we did things the right way, to ensure that our students were able to continue learning, and for both students and staff to stay safe while doing it. We've been doing face-to-face teaching using WebEx and the NUS digital learning platform Luminous for a few years now. Students have been getting their materials and submitting everything online, and Zoom became our default as we moved from teaching from office to teaching from home. Our lecturers, the admin staff, and the students have all proved incredibly resilient and adapted well to online teaching and doing their group work on collaboration platforms and breakout rooms. Q&A went on to Zoom chat, and we built up a strong teaching excellence guidebook for staff as well as for students. For examples, if students had a question, it goes on to chat with a question mark in front. So then we'll stop at an opportune time to answer those questions. But if it was a technical problem, say the audio dies, then they hit a triple bang in the chat, and we stop immediately when we see it to solve the matter. To be honest, the students actually ask more questions via chat than they do in a physical class. And other students will answer those questions too. It means they're engaged, and that's always good for us. We also tell students to make sure to have the lecturer's face take up about 1/3 of the screen so they can see our mouth talking. It's important to help comprehension, especially when we have international students. There were a bunch of teething problems starting off, of course. Making sure all the technology was running, making sure staff and students had working cameras on their computers, and that the laptops were powerful enough for teaching. In some cases, staff brought their powerful desktop machines home as well. I personally set up a teaching station in my living room with dual screens, as that's necessary to keep an eye on the class and on the chat and the slides as well. For some of the programming hands-on workshops, which we did through Zoom and breakout rooms, we knew the students weren't coping as well. So we organized and ran additional tutorial sessions and also made sure students were studying in groups and could discuss safely with each other. We also had students who were overseas and couldn't come to Singapore. So we actually started our classes an hour later to help those in the South Asia time zone. Otherwise, classes would have started at 6 a.m. for them. Then exams had to be proctored electronically. We came up with probably every conceivable scenario for the students, along with extra time for digitizing drawings and diagrams, and ran mock exams for every class a few days before the actual exam. It was a ton of work from both our program admin staff and our lecturers, but the exams went well with no more than a hiccup. Everybody adapted, nobody really complained, and most important, when we marked the exams, the students were up to their normal standards. Many of our students, both in the graduate programs and the executive programs, are working adults. They work in companies that are also struggling in the pandemic. Their companies are now faced with engaging their customers, their suppliers, their entire ecosystem in a digital fashion. So yes, it's not just ISS that has to be digital and virtual. So do our participants and students, as they have to transform their companies as well, for those companies to become digital. As their customers got used to a digital world, it created a stronger pressure for what we taught them to be relevant in their day job, or when our full-time students graduate and they go out and look for a new job. There was also a necessity to change, and we're going to change. It's a rare opportunity to improve. So we saw not just the minimum changes, but rather major re-architecting, a strong push towards automation and analytics, and building stronger and more robust software platforms. These are the stuff we teach, so it's gratifying to see the take-up and the fruition of our efforts. In any case, the world doesn't come to a halt because of the pandemic. Tech skills are still a critical step in putting the plumbing, so to speak, in place for digitalization and creating the smart nation. That's true not just in Singapore but everywhere. We've been running overseas programs for years, for example, but with Zoom, this became easier and faster. Some of our overseas students didn't make it into Singapore until late last year, so they've been studying and learning well from their home countries. This gives us the confidence to launch new programs to address new markets, both locally and overseas. For the international market, we're likely to start with more focused skills and shorter programs. But many of our programs are stackable, so you can start the learning journey overseas and continue it here in Singapore, and perhaps stack all the way to our master's degrees. There will be very strict gateways, but we welcome students to persevere. The NUS-ISS Stackable Programs are designed as an alternative learning pathway that lets working adults and those with other commitments join the continual learning journey on their own terms. They will take their courses in bite-sized chunks and stack those up to a graduate certificate. There are exams and strict gateways, and they have to meet NUS quality standards. But we have many students in the last year who have been taking this path. If the student does well in all the necessary grad certs, they can stack those grad certs into the master's program by completing the capstone module. Unlike a typical master's, stackable students have up to 7 years to complete their master's degree. The important part of the stackable pathway is that we don't look at what you've done in the past, but what you can do today while you're on the learning journey with us. And even if a student doesn't make it all the way to the end, each grad cert they earn is still an NUS accreditation of competence in a new skill. And that's the essence of learning. We have today 5 stackable programs, 4 stackable graduate certificate programs, namely Artificial Intelligence, Data Science, Digital Solutions Development, and Smart Systems and Platforms, and 1 stackable professional certificate program in Digital Leadership. That's kind of a hard thing to do. It's very hard to know what will motivate somebody. But I can tell you what motivates me to continue learning every day. It's the students coming to my class. I learn so much from them. They ask me difficult questions, which tells me they're engaged and they're interested. And I have to do homework to give a good answer. And I go back and I redo my material, so it's better the next time around I teach. When you do things, whether it's to teach, to learn, to practice, that's when you get engaged. And when your mind is part of that engagement, thinking, reflecting, even arguing, that's when we all learn. And I think that's really motivation.